Hello everyone and welcome to the biggest project I've done so far, the Ruin narrative timeline. Now at the time of recording, I'm only 6 pages into the timeline and I can already tell it's going to be a very big one, which is why I'm deciding to split it up into separate parts. So now may I present to you the story of a little girl who accidentally uncovered a secret that should have never been let out. Cassie entered what was left of Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, and an unfamiliar stench of rotten pizza filled her nostrils. The place smelled like it hadn't been cared for in years. Well, that was the case anyways. Finding her bearings, she called out for Gregory to come out and meet her, just like they had arranged. Since they had talked, she had been wondering why Gregory had chosen to meet here in the first place. He could have said for them to meet at the local park, but he was hesitant when she suggested that. Cassie climbed down the ladder, hoping to get a better look around and see what was left of the place while she waited for Gregory to arrive. She could only assume that he hadn't made it there yet. When she reached the bottom, she took a few moments to take in how ruined the place was. It wasn't every day she got to see a pizzaplex, especially not on this date. There was graffiti on the walls, presumably from various teenage vandals looking to damage the company name even further. In the centre of the lobby was a large sign saying, "Pardon our mess, we'll be back soon." To Cassie, at least, it didn't seem like anyone would be back for a long time. As she looked beneath the sign, however, something caught her eye. She couldn't really tell what it was, and moved forward to take a closer look. Approaching it, she could clearly see that it was the old golden statue of Glamrock Freddy, only now it was rusted and cracked with age. Most of the statue had fallen down, leaving only just the base with the statue's feet. Wanting to explore further, she made the decision that Gregory could wait for her when he arrived, and made her way around the giant statue to the security barriers, which were now all wide open. Clearly, the company had to evacuate everyone as fast as possible when that earthquake started. Although she never fully understood how the earthquake didn't manage to affect many areas outside of the pizzaplex, she just assumed that Fazbear Entertainment had extremely bad luck. Only now realizing how dark the place actually was, Cassie realized that she would need a flashlight. Looking around for anything that could help her, she saw an unusually well-lit area with a sign that said, "Yet complimentary entry pass." Beneath the rubble was one of those old staff pot things, with a flashlight in his hand. How convenient. Now Cassie could continue on her journey. As she walked through what was once Glamrock Gifts, she could finally begin to picture how much this place had actually been through. It looked as if the place had been ransacked, and every nook and cranny had been covered by dust. Somehow, the screen was still powered, only now it displayed static instead of the Pizzaplex logo. Cassie began to make her way up the second floor with the stairs that she had found, when the bin toppled down the stairs as if reacting to her presence. For some reason, it was on a trolley, which made even more noise and startled Cassie. She began making her way across multiple different hallways, hoping it took her somewhere, when she found a deactivated staff bot, but in almost perfect condition, except a few patches of dust. Stepping closer, it suddenly jolted to life and made an alarm sound, causing her to jump back in fear before it deactivated once again. After walking through another door, Cassie made her way to the atrium elevator, which seemed to have disappeared, leaving an empty shaft. At the feet of the open door, however, was a Roxanne Wolf-themed walkie-talkie, making some noises. Drawing closer, she realized that those noises were actually Gregory's voice, calling out words like "hello" and "can anybody hear me?" over and over again. Picking up the device, Cassie pressed the communication button and spoke into it. Asking where Gregory was, she was met with a cold message, and Gregory explained that something had grabbed him and wouldn't let him leave, and that he was trapped in the sinkhole under the Roxy Raceway.
"I'm trapped in the sinkhole under the raceway!"
Cassie had to help find him. He was her only friend after all. As she entered the elevator shaft, she looked up to find the actual elevator itself right above her head. If she didn't move out of the way, he could crush her at any given time. Frantically looking around, she found a ladder which seemed to take her all the way up. As she made her way up the first few steps, a deafening screech filled her ears, and she was so terrified she screamed. When the sound finished, there was a loud thud with an echo, and the elevator landed in where she had just been a few moments before. When Cassie made it to the top of the ladder, she was greeted with a small vent, one that a person her size could fit through. She didn't really want to go in, but seeing no other way, she entered the small space. The smell in the air was noticeably worse in the vent, so Cassie tried to make her way through it as fast as possible. Unfortunately, that was a poor choice, As the exit was coming into view, the entire vent collapsed, sending her flying into the kitchen. The ground in the kitchen had a lot of mould on it, although Cassie had no clue from what, and there was also no shortage of insects that managed to crawl over her before she stood up. Muttering words of reassurance to herself, she continued further into the kitchen when another thing caught her eye. Getting closer, she realised it was a drinking bird toy, but themed to look like Glamrock Chica. And right on cue, Glamrock Chica appeared out of nowhere. Only this time, Chica looked a lot more different than Cassie remembered. Her left arm was missing, and there was a giant hole on her face where her beak had once been. And not to mention, it was as if she had been infused with pizza and had melted cheese stuck all over her face. Chica grabbed Cassie, scaring her even more than she already was, but deactivated after a moment.
Chica? What happened to you?
Cassie asked, but got no response. Entering the next room, Cassie instantly revolted at the stench of garbage and rotten pizza filling the air, coming from the countless amounts of garbage bags that were just lying around the room. Cassie ran through the room, hoping to get out of there as fast as possible, when she saw a familiar-looking object sitting on a box. It was exactly what she thought it was, a Faz wrench, just like her father's. Her father used his one to charge up conduits around the location and access locked doors, and Cassie reckoned she could do the same if needed. And as if the room had hurt her, the very next door she needed to go through was locked and required a Faz wrench. Years of watching her father do it allowed her to instantly know what to do, and she managed to open the door without any issues. The door led to a stairwell, which seemed to have seen better days, and Cassie began to make her way down, hoping to be one step closer to finding Gregory and leaving the Pizzaplex. The place seemed to have something against her. As she reached the bottom of the stairwell, Cassie heard something move. She didn't manage to see exactly what it was, but it sounded like a blob. She shook her head and told herself she must have imagined it, and continued forward through the next door, which led her to some sort of underground tunnel. The room had many computers, and seemed to be much more cared for compared to the rest of the building, even though it was still in a terrible state. Beginning to walk through the room, Cassie was shocked to hear that one of the speakers still worked, playing the audio cue for when the Pizzaplex closed. Cassie eventually reached a dead end, with the only way out being through a large sewer pipe. She didn't particularly want to go through it, considering the water there must have been extremely dirty, but she still did it anyways, unprepared for what would come next. As Cassie entered the sewage pipe, the remains of Montgomery Gator jumped out at her, ready to attack. He threw Cassie into the water behind her, where she passed out for a few minutes, before managing to find her way up to the surface, all the way in Gator Gulf. When Cassie awoke, the first thing she noticed was a rancid taste of water, and that she had somehow ended up coming through the alligator head in Gator Gulf. Cassie had a feeling that the freaky Monty thing would be back soon, so she ignored the poor condition she was in and made her way through Gator Gulf. The place had, for the most part, collapsed in on itself and left many areas where Cassie had to crawl through. But as she was making her way through another crawl space, she was jump-scared by a robot. But unlike the mascot animatronics, this one didn't seem to be aggressive. It wore glasses and had a bunny hat on its head, and simply stood there holding its hand out. It kind of reminded Cassie of the map bot on the second floor balcony when the Pizzaplex was still up and running. Looking down at the bot's hand, she could see that it was no map bot, and more like a mask bot. The robot held a white rabbit mask in its hand, with a black patch on the rabbit's left eye. Taking the mask, she quickly noticed that it wasn't a Glamrock Bonnie mask. It had wires on the back of it, something she was sure Fazbear Entertainment wouldn't give to kids. Cassie put the mask on, and was shocked to see how it changed her perception of the world. All the faded colours of Monty's Gator Golf had been replaced with a purple glow, and she could see things through walls. As she began to get used to the new digital realm, she was met with a pop-up, featuring a happy purple bear wearing a technician suit. The bear read out a message, welcoming her to the Virtual Augmented Neural Network Integration Unit, or VANI for short. It then read out a message saying new user detected, preparing occipital transponder, before warning her, stay calm, this won't hurt a bit. Cassie immediately had no clue what any of this meant, but before she had time to react, something pinched her face and the bear gave her a new message, explaining that Fazbear Entertainment had made the real world better through the use of AR technology in the security mask. It then went on to explain that the mask could be used to deactivate the security nodes keeping the system on lockdown at the Pizzaplex. Cassie tried to stay calm, but was growing increasingly confused by the second. What was a security node? What did it mean by system lockdown? The bear introduced itself as Helpy because it was his job to help her succeed at her new job. New job? What did Helpy mean? Cassie wasn't here to work. She was here to find and save Gregory. Cassie decided that she had had enough of this and took off the mask. However, Helpy remained present in her vision. It was almost as if he had been built into her. He explained that the transponder implant allowed him to communicate wirelessly, even when the mask was removed. So the mask put something inside of me? Cassie began to panic, but continued to play along. Helpy reassured her that was just another benefit of being a Class 5 technician, but she would have to put the mask on to get any real work done. But I'm not a technician, she thought. Cassie reluctantly put the mask back on, but the only way forward was blocked off, although it looked different with the mask on. The cart that had been blocking the next room was replaced with glowing purple lines, which covered the basic shape of the cart. Getting closer, Cassie wondered what it meant. She cautiously put one hand up to the cart, but couldn't touch it. It was almost as if it had vanished, but she knew it was still there. Cassie put one foot in the area, and she found that she could walk right through the cart like a ghost. Maybe having the mask on wasn't such a bad idea after all. To open the next door, Cassie needed to charge up some conduits using her faz wrench when a thought occurred to her. What if Helpy thought she was a technician because of her wrench? She pushed the thought to the back of her mind and attempted to put the wrench in the slot, but her arm wouldn't let her. Helpy suddenly popped up again to let her know that charging up conduits was not permitted in AR mode. What on earth was that supposed to mean? Either way, she had to take off the mask and do it normally. The next room was a bathroom, with only a single wet floor signboard, which she was surprised to see was still functional. When Cassie visited the Pizzaplex, she referred to them as pat-pats and would always pat them on the head. She wasn't sure why, but it was a fun thing to do. Walking up to it with the mask on, she could see that her faz wrench gave a reaction to it. Unsure whether this could cause problems later on, she used her wrench to deactivate it and pretended that nothing had ever happened. After walking through a few more doors, something shiny caught her eye. It looked like a green pixelated block, but it disappeared when she took her mask off and reappeared when she put it back on. The block was in another room, blocked by a sealed up door. Entering the same room as it, she tried to take her mask off again to see if anything would change, but the mask was stuck to her face and she couldn't get it off. Calming down, Cassie went up to the block and placed a hand on it. The block exploded and in its place was a Glamrock Bonnie pinata, but she couldn't take it with her. She just assumed that Fazbear Entertainment had left little collectibles for the technicians as a prize for getting their work done, or something of the sort. When she left the room, Cassie found that she could remove her mask again, and quickly did so before the opportunity was taken from her. She figured that in rooms she couldn't access due to them being sealed off, she wouldn't be able to remove her mask. Moving along the path a bit further, Cassie found what looked like a computer on a trolley. It was orange and blue and had a joystick. When Cassie neared it, Helpy popped up, and explained to her that it was a camera station, and showed her how to use it. As she flicked through, Helpy appeared, and told her to press the flashing intercom button on the screen. Cassie felt a chill down her spine as she heard her own voice playing on a nearby speaker, and Monty following the source of the noise. Fun trick. The sound of Helpy's chattering made her jump. I made it using samples of your voice. Helpy explained that experienced employees use intercom recordings to direct animatronics to specific locations. One by one, Cassie led Monty as far away from where she needed to be to continue forward, until she had to make a run for it. She had no clue as to where Monty was, but wasn't going to stick around to find out. Deciding that Gregory could wait a few extra minutes longer, Cassie had a quick look around and found another AR collectible. This time, it was a Nightmare plush, the character from that old VR game the company had made to try and clear the brand name. Somehow, it had worked, and the company regained its popularity. She took off the mask and was about to make her way back to the path when she noticed a small drawing sitting on the ground. Carefully straightening it, she found a rather creative image of Glamrock Freddy and Gregory sitting together in a van, with Gregory in the driver's seat. He must have left it behind, right before he got snatched by the thing keeping him captive. As Cassie progressed forward, she came to an electrified door. Clearly, she couldn't get past it without disabling it, but how could she do that? Approaching the door, the walkie-talkie sprung to life, and a loud static noise came from the speaker, followed by Gregory's voice. Turn off the security. Turn it all off. How was she supposed to do that? And in what seemed like an answer to Cassie's question, Gregory came through one more time. Find the security nodes and deactivate the child nodes. She still didn't know what a security node was, but she figured she would know when she saw one. Looking around, Cassie put the mask on and climbed up a staircase to her left. She took in all the different things she could see with the mask, including a large hologram of Monty on the stage before he became like this, how he was supposed to be. Cassie knew that there had to be more than just an earthquake that destroyed this place so much, as the news had reported, but she didn't fully believe the earthquake story either. Wait, what was that? Cassie looked and saw a rabbit head staring right back at her. It was red and didn't seem to have a body attached to it. She took off the mask and found that it wasn't there anymore, but the space around it seemed unsettled, as if it had been disrupted. She could still see as normal, but the space had become blurry. Cassie put the mask back on, and the rabbit head reappeared. Right on cue, Gregory's voice came through the device. That's the security node. Find and deactivate the child nodes first. Follow the data paths. For whatever reason, they seem to react to your flashlight. That was helpful. Gregory sure had a lot of instructions to follow. Cassie looked at the ground for anything that might resemble the data path, and sure enough, she found one. At least, she thought she did. She wasn't entirely sure, but decided to follow it anyway and see where it took her. The wire was quite short, but it led her to a red barrel, and a fast wrench gave a loud whirring noise, as if it was confirmation that she had found a child node. Unsure what to do next, Cassie pressed a few buttons on the device, hoping that it would do something. Eventually, she found the right combination of keys, deactivating the child node and changing its color from a dark red to an ocean blue. Her fast wrench gave her a message on the small screen, saying node breached. Cassie then returned to the main security node and found that its color also matched that of the child node. She used the same keys on her fast wrench to deactivate it. This time, a large hologram appeared in front of her. It looked to be some sort of puzzle, where she had to connect matching pictures on the grid without crossing lines. Cassie did so with her wrench, not wanting to try out if she stuck her hand directly into it, although she knew that nothing would most likely happen, and the hologram disappeared. The node gave a small explosion before popping out of existence. Suddenly, a forklift carrying a box that was blocking the path ahead lifted upwards, and Cassie was able to continue. Further up ahead was a small vent-like passageway that Cassie could crawl through. Because she had the mask on, the walls were covered in some sort of purple substance. The mask was probably the greatest thing Cassie had seen in her whole life. He could let her walk through walls. He could let her see the unseen. Just what couldn't it do? It seemed like there was no disadvantage to it at all. Except there was. Cassie approached a small opening and could see another camera station up ahead. Running up to it, Cassie could see that it was also powered on, just like the previous one. However, before she got a chance to use it, Helpy appeared, giving her an ominous warning about an entity he picked up within the Vanny network. Cassie took off her mask. She couldn't see anything. Figuring that was probably just a bug in Helpy's system, she ignored what she had been told and continued with what she was doing, when she found another security node. This time, her fast wrench said that it had 2 child nodes. Following the first wire, she was led to yet another barrel, which she deactivated and returned to the security node, and followed the second wire. The second child node was a large poster of Monty's face, and covered every detail of how he should be, from his sharp teeth to the red tuft of hair on his head. She began to deactivate it, but as she was finishing up, something else filled the mask's vision. She couldn't make out what it was, but it startled her so much that she had to scream. Gregory's voice came through the walkie-talkie. He told her that something was sending out a distress signal, and Monty was responding. What thing? Cassie slowly turned around, unsure of what she would find, and was immediately paralyzed by fear. Next to where she had just been a moment ago was a large bunny rabbit with a sinister grin. It stemmed from one tail, and its arms and ears were connected to it by what looked like electrical currents. Not only that, but it seemed to be glitching, although it kept its wide smile the entire time. That seems like a good time to end this video. Don't worry though, the entire timeline still isn't finished. You still have parts 2 and 3 to look forward to. I'll try and get them done for you as soon as possible, but it may take a few weeks. In the meantime, I'll try and keep you all entertained with my FNAF Help Wanted playthrough and Fredbear's Family Slaughter. If you can, try and share this video so you get a notice and are not putting in this hard work for nothing. I feel I need to give an explanation for a few things, namely making the Pat Pats, and therefore Glamrock Bonnie, canon. This is because we know Bonnie was present in the Pizzaplex, and from what I can find, is that he was initially meant to have voice lines in the game. This fact isn't 100% verified though, so keep that in mind. There's also the fact that his eyes are lit up and can be deactivated by Cassie, so it makes the most sense to keep him in there. And if none of that makes sense, he's still a really cool character to add in. So there you have it, part 1 of the Ruin timeline done. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.